Midnight thunder cracked as Amara Lewis pressed her forehead to the window and whispered, "I should have stayed home," while her phone flashed a message that scraped old wounds. Tasha Green said, "You're not running tonight, sis," tugging the zipper of a borrowed satin dress that smelled like risk. The city lights smeared across wet glass, and Amara's chest ached like a door slammed years ago. She said, "He'll be there, won't he?" tasting rust and sugar in the same breath. Tasha said, "Maybe, but he doesn't own your breath," and the words struck like a match. Amara remembered the last time Malik Carter said, "Trust me," and how trust fell and shattered like cheap crystal. She said, "I'm not a bid to be bought," yet fear moved in her ribs like a trapped bird. Tasha said, "You are the room, not the price," then handed her the invite stamped in gold. Rain drummed harder, a drumline of nerves and history. Somewhere downtown a charity auction glowed, polished and merciless. Amara said, "If I walk in, I can't pretend anymore," and the city seemed to nod. She lifted her chin, pinned her curls, and stepped into the storm like a dare. Chandelier light shattered into prisms as a hostess smiled too brightly and said, "Welcome to the Meridian Gala," slipping programs into their hands. Amara said, "This air smells like roses and secrets," and her pulse shuffled the cards of memory. Tasha said, "We do not flinch," guiding her toward the velvet rope where names lived and died on lists. A violinist carved a tender ache that made Amara's scars hum. She said, "I won't be looked at like a lot number," and steadied her shoulders. The room carried laughter polished to perfection, as if sorrow had been checked with coats. Tasha said, "You're not merchandise," and squeezed her fingers like a promise. Across the marble, Malik Carter appeared in a pocket of applause, and the air thinned. Amara said, "I thought I buried that chapter," yet the soil shifted under her feet. A donor clinked a glass and said, "To generosity," as if generosity had a price tag. Amara inhaled the music, the roses, the danger, and chose to keep walking. They drifted along the perimeter where the flowers were thickest, and Amara said, "Every petal looks like a promise I couldn't keep." Tasha said, "You kept breathing, that counts," and flipped open the program like a shield. A photo of the auction stage gleamed with spotlights that pretended to be stars. Amara said, "When I was little, I learned applause was expensive," and her voice tucked itself away. Tasha said, "Tonight it applauds you, not them," tracing a line to the silent auction table. Glass cases held watches and trips the color of money. Amara said, "I can't be an exhibit," then forced a smile that didn't squeak. A waiter offered flutes and escape. She took the bubbles and not the exit. Tasha said, "Sip the courage," and clinked with a grin. Somewhere a loud laugh broke like a wave, and Amara braced for undertow. The stage crew tested lights, and a host in velvet said, 2 minutes to the air while applause practiced in pockets. Amara said, "If he sees me, the past will pour out," and pressed her palm flat to her ribs. Tasha said, "Let him drown in it," and they edged nearer to the aisle. Malik stepped into view beside a board member, and the room tilted like a boat. He nodded at someone unseen, gaze gliding over faces like a searchlight that knew her shape. Amara said, "I hate that my heart remembers his footstep," and the violin cut to silence. The host lifted a smile that had sold 1,000 nights and said, "Welcome, beloved patrons." Tasha whispered, "We stand tall," and squared Amara's shoulders with a gentle tug. Amara kept her chin high as the lights opened like morning. "I know I'm skaldy." The host said, "Tonight, we fund futures," and the audience answered with practiced warmth. Amara felt the word futures snag on the past like silk on a nail. Tasha said, "Choose your reason for staying," and didn't blink. Amara said, "I'll stay to prove I'm not a ghost in his story," and the sentence steadied her pulse. A photographer's flash cracked, and she refused to flinch. Malik's eyes found hers, and memory burned like a brand that still glowed. He said nothing, but the silence said everything it ever wanted. Amara said, "If I'm chosen for anything, it will be by me," and she let the words stand like armor. Tasha smiled and said, "Then let the night witness you." The host raised a hand, the room inhaled, and the first lot, took its breath. The violin quieted, and a hush settled like velvet as Amara drifted toward the portrait wall that honored past donors, faces carved in gold frames like verdicts. She said, "They look so certain," and wished certainty could be borrowed like a shawl. Tasha said, "Certainty is a costume," and adjusted the clasp on Amara's dress with a deft tug. A docent breezed past whispering, "Program begins in 5, and the hall inhaled. Amara said, "I used to believe love was the only currency, and the memory tasted like copper." Tasha said, "Dignity spends better," and her smile cut clean. Somewhere behind them, cameras sparkled like hail. Amara felt the pull of the stage, a tide that knew her ankle bones. She said, "If I falter, promise you'll nudge me forward," and Tasha nodded once like a vow. The lights dimmed 2 degrees, enough to make truth step closer. Amara lifted her chin, and the frames seemed to tilt in respect. They reached the refreshment alcove where citrus and lilies argued in the air, and Amara said, "I smell celebration and cover stories," choosing sparkling water over champagne. Tasha said clarity first, tapping her own glass. A volunteer approached and said, "Seats are assigned by the aisle," handing cards like fate. Amara said, "Fate can sit where it's told," and tucked the card into her clutch. A trio nearby traded gossip, each word dipped in sugar and salt. Amara said, "I won't let whispers script me," and the statement steadied her pulse. Tasha said, "Then be louder without raising your voice." The stage lights flared, testing brightness as if emotions had dimmers. Amara drew a breath that felt like unlocking. She glanced at the aisle, and the aisle stared back like a dare she finally wanted. The main doors parted, and Malik stepped through a ribbon of light that remembered her first, and Amara's bones answered before her mind did. She said, "History walks like it never left," pressing her clutch until it bit. Malik paused near the aisle, and a board member said, "Good to have you back," with a smile shaped like contracts. Tasha said, "Eyes up, Queen," and tilted Amara's chin with 2 fingers. Malik scanned the room, his gaze grazing her and failing to pretend. Amara said, "He won't read me tonight," and let her face become the quietest armor. Applause rose like a small storm, and then folded. The host's voice rode the speakers, gentle as a lure. Amara took 1 step toward her seat, and felt the ground accept her terms. They found their row as ushers moved like choreography, and Amara said, "Every seat is a stage if someone is watching." Tasha said, "Then perform truth," and smoothed her blazer as if it were a script. Across the aisle, Malik's jaw worked once, the way regret sometimes chews the tongue. A donor leaned in and said, "He's generous," as if generosity were absolution. Amara said, "Generosity can't refund time," and the words settled like a gavel. The host announced scholarships, and the room softened, not with pity but with pride. Amara felt the ache of children she once mentored, faces that deserved brighter doors. She said, "If bidding can open a lock, let it open theirs," and her heartbeat matched the house lights. Tasha tapped her card twice, a small drum of solidarity. The first lot closed with a bell, and the second began with art that looked like a storm deciding to forgive. Amara said, "Forgiveness is expensive," and felt the room measure worth. Tasha said, "Price is not penance," and placed the bid card flat on her knee. The host smiled and said, "Third lot is a mentorship pledge," and the crowd leaned forward as if pulled by gravity. Amara's ribs widened with a breath she needed years ago. She said, "This is why I came," and the confession didn't bruise. Malik lifted his card, and numbers climbed like kites. Amara whispered, "Let the highest number be a door," and the hush turned electric. Tasha said, "Say yes to becoming," and Amara nodded, not to him but to the future she could finally see. The host lifted a velvet card and said, "Lot 4, a private supper with a benefactor," and the room brightened like a fuse. Amara felt the heat of attention slide across her shoulders and kept breathing in counts of 4. Tasha said, "Focus on the scholarships," tapping a rhythm on her knee. Malik's gaze brushed her like a match that chose not to burn yet. A patron laughed too loudly, and the sound rang like thin metal. Amara said, "I will not be a headline," and steadied her posture until the chair respected her. The paddles rose like wings testing air. Numbers hopped the screen, zeros multiplying like rumors. The host smiled with practiced grace and said, "Do I hear 20? Amara sipped water and willed her pulse to stay in its lane. The age lights warmed, and resolve held its ground. The next card slid open, and the host said, "Lot 5, mentorship experience with our Rising Star program," and applause turned genuine. Amara felt her heart tilt toward the hopeful noise. A board member leaned toward Malik and said, "Your leadership would look good tonight." Malik pinched his lower lip as if deciding the weather. Tasha said, "Let the cause be the headline," and aligned the program with the table edge. Amara said, "If we win anything, let it be doors for someone else," and her shoulders softened. The screen flashed stories of students and Saturday tutoring rooms. The crowd leaned forward like flowers chasing sun. Paddles lifted in steady rhythm, and the bell rang a clean finish. Amara exhaled and let gratitude take a seat beside her. A ripple parted the aisle as Vanessa Cole arrived in silk the color of steel, and the air recalibrated. She said, "Make room," with a smile that owned the floor. Amara felt old caution lift its head like a guard dog. Tasha whispered, "She picks people like she picks wine," and tucked her hand into Amara's arm. Vanessa said, "Lovely to see you again," letting the word again sting. Malik's jaw set in a quiet line that meant history. Amara said, "Lovely to be seen without permission," and refused to fold. The host announced, "Lot 6, a patron's companion for a charity dinner," and the noise pricked. Vanessa lifted a paddle as if swatting a fly. The crowd vibrated with intrigue. The auctioneer said, "Opening at 5, and Vanessa's paddle rose like a verdict. A counterbid answered from the rear, confident and unseen. Malik glanced back, calculating tides, and lifted his number by a breath. Tasha said, "Don't let them turn you into theater," and pressed Amara's hand once. Amara said, "I decide how I am framed," and the words steadied the room around her. Vanessa laughed softly. A bell dipped in ice. Prices climbed until the air thinned. The host said, "We are at 30, voice silked with delight." Amara focused on the scholarship banner, not the eyes turning like planets. The bell waited, patient as fate. Silence tightened, then Malik said, 40, and the word carried like a thrown rope. Vanessa's smile thinned but held. The unseen bidder faltered, and the crowd leaned in as one body. The host said, "Going once," and Amara felt her pulse march. Tasha whispered, "Whatever happens, you are not a prize," and the truth struck true. Going twice, the host sang, and time stretched until faces blurred. Amara lifted her chin and chose to meet the moment without flinching. "Sold" rang out, and the room erupted like a shaken bottle. Eyes swung toward her, then toward Malik, mapping a story. Amara sat very still and decided the story would answer to her name. The applause dimmed into whispers that carried more weight than thunder. Amara said, "Every eye feels like a ledger," and her throat tightened. Tasha leaned close and said, "Breathe, you are no one's receipt." Malik stood still, as if pinned by his own victory, the shadow of secrets ghosting across his jawline. Vanessa Cole adjusted her gown and said, "Generosity has many faces, with a tone sharp as glass." Amara said, "So does manipulation," and the words slid into the room like a blade. The host announced a pause, and donors scattered toward drinks, leaving tension to stretch. Malik said softly, "I meant it to honor the cause," but his eyes betrayed a hidden storm. Amara said, "You buy silence, not absolution," and turned toward the corridor, spine unbent. In the side corridor, the noise of the gala dulled into muffled echoes. Amara said, "He buys dinners as if they erase yesterday's," gripping her clutch like a weapon. Tasha said, "History doesn't vanish with receipts." Malik appeared at the threshold, voice low as gravel. Amara, it was never about ownership, she said. Then why does it feel like chains with velvet trim? His eyes softened for a flicker, and he said, because I never stopped wanting to hold you, not cage you. Amara's breath staggered, torn between fury and longing. Tasha said, careful, fire burns both ways, grounding her with a firm touch. The chandelier hum returned, as if even silence leaned to listen. A board member joined them, saying, Mr. Carter, your family's pledge will carry weight tonight. Amara's chest froze, she whispered. Family. Malik's silence confirmed what truth refused to soften. Tasha said, you should have led with that, her tone sharp enough to cut velvet. Amara said. So the bid wasn't only yours, and every word a stone. Malik said, I wanted to shield you from their name, from their judgment, but the explanation rang hollow. Amara said, you wanted me blind, and her voice cracked with betrayal. The board member chuckled nervously and excused himself, sensing the storm. The corridor stretched like a courtroom, every detail suddenly evidence. From the far side, a familiar voice said, surprised to see me, and Amara's blood chilled. Darius Lewis, her estranged father, stepped from the shadows with a glass in hand. Amara said, you don't belong here. Her words jagged. Darius said, I belong wherever your choices echo mine, smirking with regret hidden under arrogance. Tasha whispered, this is poison, and placed herself slightly forward. Malik froze, his eyes narrowing, as if recognizing an old wound. Amara said, your absence raised me harder than your presence ever could. Darius lifted his glass and said, absence has its price, letting the words sting like ash. The past cracked open, uninvited. The corridor spun with ghosts and secrets, and Amara felt every wall lean in. She said, first Malik hides a family, then you appear as if summoned by my scars. Darius said, I came to remind you blood stains deeper than love. Malik stepped forward, voice rough, you don't get to wound her again. Tasha said, enough. This is her choice, not yours, not his. Amara's tears welled but refused to fall. She said, I will not be pawned by men with debts. Darius said, you carry my name, you carry my shadow, and the words dripped like tar. Amara said, then tonight I shed both, her spine iron. The chandelier beyond flickered, and resolution trembled into existence. The auction resumed beyond the doors, but the corridor held a storm fiercer than applause. Amara said, I'm suffocating between truths I never asked for, her voice trembling yet unbroken. Malik said, I fought to protect you, but the words carried the weight of chains. Darius scoffed, protection is just possession dressed polite. Tasha stepped between them saying, she isn't property, not past, not future. Amara's chest heaved, she said, stop speaking as if I'm furniture you rearrange. Malik reached for her hand, hesitation visible, and whispered, I never stopped loving you. Amara's eyes burned, she said, love that hides is still betrayal. Silence thickened like smoke as the chandelier flickered above them. Malik's voice cracked as he said, I carried your memory like a wound that never closed. Amara said, a wound bleeds truth, not lies wrapped in silk. Darius raised his glass and said, see, he loves you like I loved your mother, recklessly. Amara's jaw clenched, she said, don't you dare compare your absence to his silence. Tasha whispered, Amara, your heart is the only judge here, grounding her with steady eyes. Malik said, I would burn bridges to stand beside you. Amara snapped, then why build walls with secrets? Her breath came in short waves, fury and longing colliding. Around them, the hum of music bled faintly through the ballroom doors, a cruel counterpoint. The silence cracked when Malik said, I wanted you safe from their name, voice breaking like glass. Amara said, safe means nothing if I'm kept in darkness. Darius laughed, bitter and hollow, she's got your fire, Malik, and my stubbornness. Tasha said, her fire is hers, stop stealing her reflection. Amara's tears spilled, but she held her chin high. She said, you both speak as if I'm a prize to claim, but I'm the one who chooses. Malik's shoulders slumped, and he whispered, "Choose me, Amara, not the silence." Amara inhaled sharply, her pulse hammering truth to the surface. The air pulsed with unbearable weight, every second demanding eruption. Vanessa reappeared at the edge of the corridor, her silver gown shimmering like a blade. She said, "The crowd whispers already, Amara. Your name is the show." Amara turned, saying, "I am not your gossip, Vanessa, nor his trophy, nor his regret." Vanessa smirked, "Then prove it by leaving with dignity, not drama." Malik's eyes blazed. "You don't belong in this fight." Vanessa said coolly, "Neither does she, yet you dragged her in." Tasha's voice cut like thunder, "Enough. Amara belongs wherever truth does." Amara said, "I decide how this ends," voice firm and trembling at once. Vanessa's smile faltered, silence thickening like smoke in velvet halls. The storm broke when Amara said, "I choose myself first," her voice echoing like a verdict. Malik's face crumpled with both loss and hope. He said, "Then let me walk with you, even if I stumble." Darius growled, "She carries my blood, not your permission." Amara turned to him and said, "Blood does not define me, choices do." Vanessa folded her arms, silent now, the weight of defeat glittering in her eyes. Tasha whispered, "That's the crown, sis," and her voice held tears. Amara felt the burden lift slightly, as if chains had fallen, even with scars left behind. She said, "I will not be bought, silenced, or shaped. Tonight I belong to no one but myself." The words landed like thunder, undeniable and final. The music softened to a distant tide while Amara stood in the corridor's sighing light and gathered the pieces of her breath. She said, "I will leave this night on my feet," and the words steadied her bones. Tasha said, "Then we walk slow and true," looping her arm through Amara's like a promise. Malik kept respectful distance, voice low. "If space is what you need, I will honor it." Amara said, "I need truth that doesn't arrive with a price," and her heart quieted. The chandeliers hummed as if blessing restraint. Vanessa lingered by a mirror and said, "Dignity suits you," with a shrug that surrendered heat. Darius drifted back toward the crowd, the past losing its grip one step at a time. Tasha said, "Your name belongs to your future," and Amara let the syllables soothe. Amara said, "Tonight I choose light that shows everything," and the corridor felt wide again. They slipped into the side lounge where roses rested in tall glass, and the carpet swallowed sound. Amara said, "I keep thinking of the kids who need doors, not spectacle," and set her clutch down like a decision. Tasha said, "We can pledge time as loud as money," and her smile cut clean through fog. Malik said, "I'll end the theater and start the work. Let me sign the mentorship slate beside yours." Amara studied him for the first honest silence and said, "No signatures without sunlight." He nodded, "Public, accountable, and yours to lead," and the words found footing. Vanessa hovered, then said, "Allow me to fund travel stipends quietly, but transparently." Tasha said, "Transparency is never quiet," and everyone almost laughed. Amara said, "Then we draft the pledge tonight," and the room felt useful. Back near the stage doors, the host rehearsed names while staff wheeled in fresh lots. Amara said, "If we announce a community fund, it must center students, not donors," and the statement held gravity. Malik said, "Then the credit reads student council and tutors, not us," and his gaze steadied. Tasha said, "And the metrics live online with open books," tapping her phone like a gavel. Vanessa sighed, "I can live without applause if the work sings." Amara felt a clean ache lift, the kind that follows truth. She said, "We start with weekend labs and paid mentors," and the plan clicked. The stagehand nodded, "We can slot a mention after lot 9, offering a path." Amara said, "Make it brief, make it honest, make it clear," and the hallway brightened. When the bell closed lot 9, the host said, "A brief note on a new student-led fund," and the room leaned in with quiet curiosity. Amara said, "This is for transit, meals and tutors, so talent never stalls at a bus stop, and her voice carried steady. Tasha said, "We welcome volunteers, not saviors," and her grin sparked soft laughter. Malik said, "Our names stay behind the work," and the line earned a tempered nod. Vanessa said, "Receipts will be visible to all," and even skeptics relaxed. The applause was warm, not fevered, and it felt like air after rain. Amara said, "Thank you for choosing open doors," and stepped back without shaking. The moment landed clean, free of spectacle, rich with promise. After the announcement, the night thinned to soft conversations and the clink of honest glass. Amara said, "I still choose myself first," and the vow felt gentler now. Malik said, "Then if I am allowed to stay, it will be as a partner to the work, not the author of your fate." Tasha said, "Partnership has chores and receipts," and she winked. Vanessa said, "Consider my stipend pledge the first line item," and her smile finally looked human. Darius hovered at a distance, then offered a small nod that asked nothing and promised less. Amara said, "We start Monday with the draft and a student roundtable," and purpose lit her ribs. Tasha said, "I'll book a room and bring snacks that taste like victory." Malik said, "I will bring silence when you need it." Amara breathed in evening roses and said, "Then let's go home honest." The gala ebbed into silence. The marble halls now hushed as shadows stretched long across polished floors. Amara said, "Strange how noise fades but eyes still follow," her tone soft and steady. Tasha said, "Let them follow, your back is your crown," lifting her chin with quiet pride. Malik lingered near the glass doors, saying, "I'll walk behind if you want distance, beside if you'll allow." Amara said, "I will walk ahead tonight, my feet know the way," and her steps echoed like new hymns. Vanessa adjusted her wrap, whispering, "Some endings hold beginnings," a rare gentleness in her voice. Darius leaned on a column, watching without words, his silence finally heavier than his threats. Tasha said, "The night belongs to you now," and Amara breathed in the truth. She said, "Then let it close with peace," and the marble agreed. On the steps outside, drizzle kissed the pavement, and city lights bled into wet stone. Amara said, "The storm feels gentler now," wrapping her arms around herself. Malik stepped closer, careful, and said, "Storms pass, but roots remain." Tasha shook her head, "Roots grow where they choose, not where others plant them." Vanessa exhaled smoke from a slim cigarette and said, "Maybe survival makes us kin, not blood or bids." Amara turned toward the night, saying, "Survival is not enough, I want living." Darius appeared at the edge of the light, muttering, "Living means carrying what you can't bury," then fading back into darkness. Tasha took Amara's hand, warm and firm. Amara said, "I will carry, but I will not collapse," and the city hummed in agreement. They walked toward the car waiting by the curb, headlights soft in the mist. Malik said, "I will not chase if you close the door, but I will remain near if you wish." Amara said, "Love is not a shadow, it must walk in light," and her gaze cut through the fog. Tasha said, "Light burns, but it also heals," her tone a balm. Vanessa tapped her phone, saying, "Transparency begins tonight. No more closed ledgers," and her vow rang honest. Amara looked at Malik, saying, "If you stay, it cannot be with silence." He nodded, eyes wet, "Then I will stay with words and with work." The driver opened the door, and Amara paused before stepping in. She whispered, "Tonight I chose myself. Tomorrow I may choose more," and the city breathed with her. The car's engine hummed as Amara settled inside, raindrops streaking glass like fleeting scars. Malik said, "I'll follow in another car, not to cage but to guard." Amara said, "Guardianship means nothing if its silence is freedom," and her stare was firm. Tasha said, "She has her compass now, and it points forward." Vanessa leaned in through the open door, saying, "Don't waste what courage cost you," her voice stripped of venom. Darius stood in the rain, no words, just watching with a weight Amara refused to carry anymore. Amara said, "I am more than your shadow, more than your silence, more than your spite," letting each syllable strike clean. The door shut, and the past stayed outside. The tires whispered against wet stone, carrying her forward. The city rolled past in streaks of gold and blue, reflections painting Amara's face with light that felt new. She said, "I am not a prize, not a ghost, not a silence," her whisper filling the car. Tasha smiled through tears, saying, "You are flame, and flame writes its own sky." Malik's silhouette followed in another car, headlights steady, not pressing. Vanessa's name flashed on Amara's phone, a transfer confirmation for the pledge. Daria's shadow dissolved into the rain behind, no longer her anchor. Amara pressed her palm to the window and said, "The future owes me nothing, but I will claim it anyway." The city opened ahead, vast and waiting. Her final words fell into the quiet. "I walk forward, and nothing owns me but my truth," and the night bowed to her.